Don't worry, you didn't miss day one of the trial, but the fight has definitely begun. What's going on right now is Bryan Kohberger and the defense are objecting to the request of Shannon Gray, Kaylee's family's attorney, to lift the gag order. What this means is the defense prefers everything to be shut down and nobody to be allowed to discuss the case or dispel any rumors out there. In my recent video where I talked about Dylan and her actions after the night of the murders, I mentioned that I thought Kaylee's family would want the gag order lifted so that they could help dispel the rumors that were going around out there about Dylan. Now, the longer time goes on where people aren't able to talk about the case, the more of the discussion kind of builds around these different theories out there about what may have happened and why Dylan didn't call, what kind of connections there could be regarding drug sales and things like that. So the longer the gag order is in place, the longer these kind of things that could be flying around out there and start influencing people toward Bryan's innocence in the case, where if the gag order is lifted, their attorneys can kind of make a statement for them and dispel or clarify anything that's going around, right? So it's in the benefit of Bryan for the gag order to be in place so that kind of these things can continue to build and people kind of start leaning more toward him being innocent versus looking at the initial evidence that we have on his arrest at the beginning of the case. Right now there's a lot of rumors out there going around about Dylan, and if we give that 2 more months, pretty soon she'll be the granddaughter of Tony Montana. But if the victim's attorneys have the opportunity to come out and say, hey, wait a minute, no, let's clarify what happened here, that would sway opinion toward the idea that Bryan is guilty. So even though the trial hasn't technically started, they're already battling it out in the court. So this is something we'll have to keep an eye on. We'll have to see what happens, and if the gag order ends up getting lifted, what do these families have to say? Now there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. As I mentioned in my last video, I wanted to share with you a case that I came across that hasn't been solved yet, that isn't too far from Pennsylvania. Now, as you know, a lot of talk has been going around about law enforcement looking for some connections to Bryan on any unsolved cases in Pennsylvania. But I was looking a little bit outside of that, and just about 10 hours away from where Bryan would have lived is an unsolved crime that has a lot of similarities to some other cases that we haven't figured out yet, including the Juten case, the Sandra Ladd case, the Idaho 4 case, even some similarities to the Catherine Janis case. So this one's very interesting. I want to share that with you all, and then I want to hear what you think. Do you think this is a case that the same person who attacked the Idaho 4 or maybe some of these other victims could have also committed? And if not, then does that mean we have multiple people out there committing these crimes with this almost exact same MO? Sneaking in late at night while people are asleep, attacking with a knife, multiple reports of a masked man, stabs to the face, neck, head area. The crimes being described as very violent attacks, very angry or revenge-driven attacks. No robbery, no SA. Now, I don't know what is more scary, the idea that Bryan Kohberger may be connected to some of these crimes, or the idea that we could have multiple people out there committing these crimes. Please let me know what you think about that in the comments. So again, the things we're looking for to connect these cases are somebody attacking late at night, sneaking into somebody's house, not being afraid of multiple people being in the house. There doesn't seem to be a focus on just females. It seems to be that we have multiple cases here where there is also a male present who's also attacked in the home. Whether that's unexpected or planned, we don't know, but it does appear that whoever's committing these crimes is brazen enough to enter a home while they know there are multiple people in the house and there's the chance of being encountered. So we're looking for very violent type attacks or very kind of angry or hate-filled attacks. There's a pattern with stabs to the face, head, and neck area, We don't know for sure yet about the Idaho 4 case. The unsolved case I'm going to share with you right now is interesting because based off what we know about Bryan, there are some connections here, it appears, to the couple that was murdered in Oak Park, Illinois, Leslie Jones and Thomas Johnson.
A female, approximately 65. She was found on the ground bleeding.
The double murder on Fair Oaks Avenue is one of the most violent crimes Oak Park has ever seen. Tom Johnson and his wife, 67-year-old Leslie Jones, described as loving parents and brilliant Ivy League lawyers.
They fell in love and they got married, and they had 3 boys.
Got a second one in the bed over here.
Last week, Oak Park police said their investigation of this brutal crime had not slowed in any way, but they've declined a request for an interview. NBC5 Investigates has spent months reviewing the autopsy reports, looking at the legal work the couple was involved in, and talking with friends and family. And then we showed our reporting to a veteran homicide detective for analysis.
I don't think this was random because of the overkill.
Rich Shack retired after 30 years.
I think that somebody planned and had something against them. If Mr. Johnson was a late night guy, people would know that. You'd look at lights, you'd case the place and determine when people would be in bed.
The couple was attacked apparently as they slept in their upstairs bedroom. Mr. Johnson found face down in bed, stabbed 17 times.
I'm looking for enemies. I'm looking for anybody that would want to do that much damage to someone.
Johnson's wife, Leslie Jones, was at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in her nightgown, apparently trying to escape. She was stabbed 34 times.
There's anger and rage there, probably twice as much as there was with Mr. Johnson, but it shows that she might have put up a struggle of some sort, and whoever the killer was just went off and just kept stabbing and stabbing.
There was no sign of forced entry. We're told the couple often left their doors unlocked. Nothing appeared to be taken, but Mr. Johnson's wallet was on the floor, its contents scattered.
You could say, was the person looking for something specific in that wallet and found it or didn't find it? Or were they trying to make it look like it was some sort of robbery or home invasion thing that it wasn't?
The family dog, known to bark, was wounded but not killed.
Nobody's mad at the dog. The dog was doing his job. And you stab the dog one time to silence the dog, and that mission is accomplished.
Footprints from the offender stepping in blood were visible in the residence.
They're not totally definitive, but they certainly put you in the right direction.
Is it likely the killer left DNA at the scene?
When you see an attack that violent with a knife or any other sharp instrument, it's often very easy for the offender to be injured himself.
After eliminating friends and family, Shack says you'd run any unidentified DNA through all existing data banks of known offenders. He says investigators have undoubtedly looked for disgruntled legal clients and at Johnson's job as a hearing officer for the Chicago Police Board, handling hundreds of complaints against cops since 1991. Would you look at what cops might be angry over losing jobs and pensions?
Certainly you would look at that. Personally, don't think it was law enforcement.
Now, when I was looking at these cases early on, one thing that I had been thinking about was why would Bryan target a male victim in some of these cases? But recently we learned that Bryan had been fired from his job at WSU, and it appears that he had an encounter with a professor at the college who was male. Now, it could have been because of Bryan's actions towards maybe female students in the class. There's talk that Bryan was grading them unfairly and treating them poorly, and that could have been escalated. Bryan had a discussion, right? And then from there, Bryan had this encounter with Dr. Snyder at WSU. But these are kind of the things that sent Bryan into motion with getting fired from WSU, is some of these encounters that he was having with the professor. So it seems that Bryan could have an issue with anybody as a victim, male or female, and not necessarily something that the victims did, but there could have been something in the perpetrator's life that happened that caused him to seek out a victim, and they just happened to be the targets that were chosen. If he were set off by something that happened in his personal life and was looking to lash out. Now, I was also wondering a little bit about what could have potentially caused Bryan to cross paths with this couple, or if it was maybe just a random choosing. But when I looked up the Oak Park Arts Council, there was an interesting thing right off the bat that showed up on the screen. We just don't have a lot of information that we can use to try to connect Bryan to the location, looking in from the outside. However, if you are in the mood for a vegan grain bowl, the Oak Park Arts District is a good place to go. It would also be a good place to go catch a play if maybe you knew somebody who was performing. So like I said, everybody, let me know, do you think that these cases could be connected? If they're not connected, what's scarier to you? The idea that Bryan Kohberger could be responsible for multiple crimes, maybe some of the crimes I've mentioned, or the idea that there are other people out there committing these crimes almost in the same exact way. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button. My next video will be coming out very soon and you don't want to miss it.